Alright, so today I'm going to go over the dyeing process for action figures. When I first set out to do this, there were very few resources available on YouTube or the internet to learn from, most of those being extremely brief, vague, and as I now know, often inaccurate. So I searched for as much information as I could find on what types of plastics are used in the manufacturing process of Masters of the Universe figures and how to dye those, and got to work. I've probably dyed around 25 figures at this point, so hopefully I'll have plenty of info to share with you. So we're going to be using RIT Dye-More synthetic dye. This is one of the only dyes on the market that will actually bond to plastic, or at least certain types of plastic. It doesn't bind to all types of plastic, unfortunately, but we'll get to that in a moment. So on the counter, you'll see we have an Origins Fisto, we have the 5.5-inch version of He-Man from the Netflix animated series, and a couple of miniatures from Dollar Tree, all Masters of the Universe figures. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to want to break down our figure into as many individual parts as possible without breaking anything. So what I do is I'll find a container big enough to see the figure, and I'll heat it up just until it starts to boil. Then I'll pull it out, let it sit for about 30 seconds, and drop my guy in. The guy needs to sit in there a couple minutes for that plastic to get nice and soft and pliable. And when it does, it'll start popping right apart. Taking these feet off is incredibly difficult when it's cool, but that came off like a breeze. Who needs that? Alright, and here we have our figures fully disassembled. The animated series guy, he's really not meant to be taken apart. The Origins figures, however, they were engineered to be swapped around with different parts from figure to figure, so they really break down a lot. Typical arm is going to be the shoulder, forearm, hand. You've got your groin and your torso and your head. The legs break down into 4 pieces. You've got the thigh, the upper calf, lower calf, and then the foot. And so that's all of your Origins figure there. Now that we've got them broken down, we're going to scrub them with Dawn dish detergent. I'm going to clean every square inch of these figures. I want to make sure that there's no oil or anything else on them that can prevent the dye from bonding to the surface. And now that we've got our figures nice and clean, we're going to go ahead and prepare our dye. Now, the bottle doesn't actually tell you what ratio to pour the dye to the water. It tells you to put in a teaspoon of dish detergent. I can tell you that I've done it with and without, and it seems to do better without the dish detergent. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour it in really thick. One thing I've noticed is the more dye I use, obviously, the more effective it is, but I'm just going to really pour it in there. Stir it up. You're going to want to be real careful where you let this stuff splash, because it will stain your floor and your countertop and anything else it comes in contact with. Let's see, I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. Another thing really important is the temperature of the water. The directions on the dye tells you to bring it to a boil and keep it at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 60 minutes. Do that if you want to ruin your action figures. That's way too hot for these things. I can tell you that from experience. So I will only put my dial to right in between 1 and 1.5, just below the quarter mark, I guess. And I will let my pieces soak for a really long time. And I've had no problems doing that the way. I haven't had any issues with warping or expansion and contracting, causing pieces not to fit together anymore, which is what happened when I ran it too hot. So anyway, once I've got enough dye in there, I'm just going to start dropping everything in. Now, one thing really important that you want to do is with your pieces that have movable joints, you're going to want to drop it in for the first couple hours with this piece all the way that way, and then pull it all out, find all your pieces with movable joints, move it the other direction and let it sit for at least another hour. That way you're going to darken as much coverage as you can when you are posing the figure. Some of these pieces are not going to die. I can tell you right now, CGI He-Man sword is made out of ABS, and I've tried to dye these. It doesn't take it all. Well, I said I'm going to drop it in there just to prove it to you. And Fisto's sword, I'm not really sure what it's made out of. Let's see what happens. Let's see. The Dollar Tree miniatures, these guys are kind of soft. I'm thinking they're not made out of ABS, so let's find out what happens. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to let it sit for 2 hours. I'm going to stir it about every 30 minutes, maybe a little bit sooner. I just want everything to move around. You don't want any piece of it, the plastic, touching something else for too long, because it's not going to get any dye on it. But in 2 hours, I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to move my joints, and I'll be back.